Despite his name popping up as a potential contender if we end up with a contested convention on the Republican side, Paul Ryan swears that he is not remotely interested in actually becoming president. Recently, he said to Hugh Hewitt, "I do believe people put my name in this thing, and I say, get my name out of that. I think you need to run for president if you're going to be president, and I'm not running for president. So period, end of story." Except that it's not the end of the story, because he then went on to release this video.
What really bothers me the most of politics these days is this notion of identity politics, that we're going to win an election by dividing people, rather than inspiring people on our common humanity and our common ideals and our common culture, on the things that should unify us. We all want to be prosperous. We all want to be healthy. We want everybody to succeed. We want people to reach their potential in their lives. Now, liberals and conservatives are going to disagree with one another on that. No problem. That's what this is all about. So let's have a battle of ideas. Let's have a contest of whose ideas are better and why our ideas are better.
Wow.
You remember when Bob Livingston made one of those videos?
No, I do not. Dennis Hastert.
Denny Hastert.
Ooh, that is unfortunate.
I don't want to know about
these
Denny
days.
Hastert.
And the videos he made,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so look it up. Okay.
So it's a speech to interns. That's the
No, that
excuse.
that was not a speech to interns. That was a commercial for Paul Ryan running for president. Okay. So here's one thing I'll just say though. Look, he's there. He's in no race right now. It is his congressional seat is not competitive. He's not in a race for Speaker of the House. He just became Speaker of the House. There's no reason to put together a video like that.
Well,
He didn't want that job either.
Oh no, he doesn't.
He said he wouldn't do it.
He wouldn't do it.
It was exactly
Wouldn't do it,
like
yeah.
this. So the video links to Ryan's hashtag Confident America slate of policy priorities on healthcare, poverty, and creating jobs. Now, theoretically, every speaker could do this sort of thing to get public support for their agenda. I actually think it makes a ton of sense to do that. I don't know why they don't do that. But they don't do that, and so it stands out a ton when you choose to do that. And when you choose to pitch it not just as, I'm the guy to unite the sides, which has nothing to do with these policies, by the way, but you also pitch it as if it's meant to make Donald Trump look bad.
Yes.
And anyone else who focuses on identity politics and separating us rather than bringing us together, which I would argue actually applies to all of the candidates on that side, but especially Donald Trump. And if we have a contested convention and he's the person who's going up against Donald Trump in that case, it sort of fits with the video.
So let's understand Paul Ryan's history, which then informs this moment in time a little bit better. So Paul Ryan in 2012 didn't want to run for president, partly for the same reason he gave for not wanting to be Speaker of the House. That's kind of a pain in the ass. Like, I don't want to go and run all that time. And for the Speaker of the House, it's like, now I got to go back and forth between Washington and my house in Wisconsin too many times, right? So, like, he's always kind of, like, dragged into it theoretically. So what he said is, I would prefer to just be vice president. That way I only have to run for a couple of months. And the guys who are backing him, and his biggest backers by far, are the Koch brothers. And so Charles Koch had been pushing for Paul Ryan to run for president. He couldn't get him to do it, which is hilarious. So then when it came time to pick vice president, lo and behold, the guy who was picked was Paul Ryan. Huge, advocate for him being Charles Koch, and there he is on the ticket. So then there's this, John Boehner's leaving, and golly gee, I don't want to do it. And next thing you know, the guys who have the most amount of money to give to the Republican Party still like Paul Ryan, and he becomes Speaker of the House. Now there's talk of a contested convention. Charles Koch writes another piece, or is talked about a piece where he says Paul Ryan should, be the president at a contested convention. And all of a sudden, we've got things that look like ads for Paul Ryan for president.
Yeah.
And we're about to do a story about the Koch brothers pulling money out, the $889 million that they plan to spend. Such a specific number.
It's incredibly specific for a hypothetical number.
I'm going to call it $900 million. The $900 million that they plan to spend on the cycle, they're not interested in spending it on the primaries, on the presidential race, because they don't like either of those guys, but they like someone else.
Yeah. So it's mainly they claim they're going to spend it on the Senate side. But if you didn't spend any money on the primaries because you don't like Ted Cruz or Donald Trump, and it turns out that's not your candidate anyway, it's someone else, then you've got more money to spend for President Ryan's run, right? In their mind.
Also, and they don't want to spend money that helps yes, they'd have more money then, but they don't want to spend money to help either of those two guys.
Right, because they're not backing them. They're backing him.
They're backing him.
I also think it's I think it's not the worst plan they've come up with, but I think it's a bad plan for two reasons. I think one, if they want to get their man in the contested convention, assuming you're going to have to change the rules anyway, which you would have to do to be able to have Paul Ryan even get it, since he hasn't won 8 races in the primary, he didn't run. Go for Kasich. Why not just go for Kasich? He's actually won a state. He's massively popular in comparison to Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. He was running and has some supporters, and he would give them 90% of what they want anyway. I would say leave Paul Ryan as Speaker of the House and go for Kasich. And second of all, look, I have no doubt that Paul Ryan would probably be much more popular amongst the general election public than a Donald Trump or a Ted Cruz, especially because he'll come into this thing having avoided all of the mudslinging that we had over the past 9 months or so. But that was his like tailor-made, look at me, America speech. And it sucked. It was just weak and vanilla, and I don't think Republicans would like it. I think Democrats are more likely to like it. But that was just a weak, boring little ad.
Well, he's always come across, and you know, when this idea of somehow taking the second place on the ticket and then ultimately positioning yourself to make a run for the presidency is not a new one. I mean, frankly, it's the tried and true way to get there. But he's always positioned himself and been positioned as the more electable guy. I mean, everything from the cosmetics of Paul Ryan to sort of his ability to speak, and you saw it there in that video, and sort of being open to compromise. I mean, this, you know, that doesn't necessarily have any kind of relationship to reality, but this is just sort of the way he's quacked. So I think he's run this way. But your idea that he's sort of been this reluctant participant as he slowly rises to the ranks.
I want to do it.
Yeah.
It's like taking acting
It's a house of
classes
cards.
all your life, right? Because you want to be an actor so that you can play man on stairs in George Clooney movie as opposed to George Clooney. Like you wanted to have the worst job in politics, vice president, but you're not interested in the best job in politics. President of the United States. It's inconceivable.
Of course he's
Yeah, right.
interested in the
Of course he's
presidency. Of course he is.
But-
So I just, and this could be a Frank Underwood kind of move,
That's what it seems like,
right?
yeah.
So like, oh, me, golly gee, oh, look at that, I want to be
Yeah.
president, right? Sorry about the spoiler.
I was actually just going to say something, but then I realized it's a massive
No,
spoiler,
but
so.
think about this. Think about this. So the Koch brothers have been trying to circumvent the American people for decades now, right? Like if we allow money into politics and then you put a tsunami of money into these races, then we won't need to bother with the voters. We'll just trick them with all the ads we run, yada yada. But they're having trouble doing that on a presidential stage because there's so much free media that they can't spend enough to overcome the free media. Well, wouldn't this be a super convenient way of continuing to ignore the voters? It's an end run around them, contested convention, right? So the guys you voted for, you're not even going to get those guys, okay? I'm going to put in my guy no matter what, and then I'll pour the money in the general election and try to make him president.
You know, a couple of reasons why I disagree with John about Kasich. And it's what makes Kasich attractive to me just comparatively. Because John Kasich is a governor and he took that Affordable Care Act money. And that is emblematic of what kind of president he would be. He would be a terrible president, don't get me wrong. But he likes governing. He is interested in it. He is not a shut down the government Republican. And he, in Ohio, showed some willingness. He's on the wrong side of every issue, but he likes making it work. Paul Ryan, first of all, F-R-A-U-D. We're going to get exposed to that. Giant fraud. Not smart, not nothing. Giant fraud. Likes to work out, right? Likes to exercise.
Might not even really like that.
Might not even like that, but that's what he's super into. People who read Ayn Rand and work out all the time are not interested in making a government.
That's a well-known rule.
That's
That
a
sounds
fact.
like an
That
old
is a-
school. That
that
sounds
is-
like an old
I'm
school.
not sure there's a lot of overlap
That
there.
is
Maybe,
fact.
I don't know.
And so we would find here that he is a conservative unlike any other we've seen. He would simply do their bidding, and this is a guy who would shut down agency after agency, who every presidential order that he gives, what are they called?
Executive orders.
Every executive order that he gives would be
Kasich,
about
like pro-drilling?
less. Stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it. Let the as the Koch brothers letter that we have today will say, hey, free enterprise, let the market work. Let the market work. That's all he would do. That's all he would do.
Yeah, it's funny. I was going to say very similar thing, which is It's funny that we're back on good terms.
No, thank God.
Because Kasich is less of an order taker. He doesn't always follow the orders. Now, he busted the union, etc., but as Ben
he
pointed
funded
out,
He's a conservative
Parenthood.
Republican. I mean,
he is.
yeah,
He's very conservative, and he's quite religious, but in a slightly less hostile way.
No,
right?
like he might actually put his arm around some people.
Yeah, and might actually care a little bit about one or two human beings, right? But he doesn't always take the orders, and he sometimes compromises with the Democrats. Whereas Paul Ryan's the main. He's perfect because he appears telegenic and young. Change on the outside.
They've got this nonsense.
He's telegenic based on an exact camera angle. As soon as he starts moving, it falls apart.
No, but they've got this. But
tall,
he's
skinny.
No,
They
he's
are.
dude. I mean,
But
certainly
they've
look
got
at the
this
rest of the
smart-
field.
They convinced us it's already set in stone. The intellectual wing of the party. He's the smart guy.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's not. There's all it's going to be.
Okay, what
is-
about a third reason it's not going to work? This is not my reason. This is Cenk's reason that he articulated earlier this week. Assuming that Ted Cruz is able to wrangle all of his delegates, you need those delegates to vote to change the rules. And if he controls those delegates and they don't change the rules, Paul Ryan can't become the candidate.
No, it's not going to work. Yeah, that's true. It doesn't mean they're not going to try.
But also, once you get into an open convention, my understanding, and first of all, there is no. My understanding is as limited as apparently Republicans' understanding.
Mine is based on House of Cards season 4.
I mean,
all I got.
all bets are off once the first ballot is gone.
That's right.
And they can make the rules whatever they want.
That's the point. They can make the rules whatever
you
they
can
want.
vote for who you, there are still rules where like gradually more and more of the delegates are able to vote however they want, but they still vote based on the rules that have been established, and those rules make it so that you had to have won 8 states.
I don't think that's true on the second ballot.
So we'll
I
look
don't,
into that.
I don't think it's true on the second. And also, but all they have to do is have the guys who make the rules vote right then to change the rules.
And
It's not
that's
like-
what they've
I
talked
know,
about
but he's-
doing.
but
That
he's
very
saying-
thing.
No. So my understanding is that the Rules Committee meets a couple of weeks before the convention.
Yes.
And then once they do that, then you cannot change the rules in the convention.
Right.
So in that Rules Committee, you bring up an interesting point. After the first vote, in a second vote, do they not need
the 8 state rule.
But the thing is, the problem is, Ben, even under your scenario, they go to a second vote, they go to an 18th vote. Once Trump and Cruz align on that, which they will, because they're the only ones who have won 8 states or more, you're never going to move their delegates, and you're never going to be able to change that
I
rule.
disagree completely that you'll never be able to do. First of all, change the rule. They don't vote on changing the rules. The delegates don't vote on changing the rules. Rules Committee will vote on changing the rules.
No, the Rules Committee is based on the delegates.
You're telling me that the Republican establishment can't get the rules changed to their liking. I don't believe you for 1 second.
That's an
Not-
interesting
not-
point.
not
No, that's
for-
a fair point.
And
They
also-
might just cheat.